Hello and welcome to my Instagram page, Mystical Moments01. My name's Carol Graham and I am here tonight and I'm going to be very shortly joined by the absolutely lovely Michelle, who's talking to you about tarot and astrology. Hello there, Michelle. Lovely to see you. Hi, how are you doing? How are you doing?
I am excellent. I am excellent. I'm
Fabulous.
so excited to be here today. I absolutely love your channel. I love your readings, both live and on your feed. So it's just an honor to be here and meet you and spend this time with
Oh,
you in this space with you.
thank you. Thank you so much. It's an absolute honor to have you here and a pleasure, to be having you on my page. For anybody who doesn't know Michelle, Michelle is from at Astrological. I can never say it. Astrological Tarot. Okay.
Yes.
So Michelle does both astrology and tarot, as you can guess by her name. And we're here to talk mainly about astrology. Okay. So why not? Let's just dive straight in. Michelle, how did you first become interested and aware of astrology?
Oh my goodness. So I was in a Girl Scout troop when I was 9 years old, and we went up to this, beautiful place in Hawaii where we could get our Stargazer badge. And so in order to earn our badge, we had to identify all the different constellations and get out all the equipment and use all of the tools that were provided to us. And I remember doing that, and it had a profound effect on me. And my best friend at the time turned to me and she goes, "Oh, that's Delphinus." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, you're right." And she goes, "Well, I'm an Aquarius." And I go, "What's that?" And she goes, "Oh, so there's astrology and there's astronomy." And she goes, "And my
Yeah,
stone's an amethyst." And I'm like, "What's that?" So I'm 9 years old going, I question, but some people call us Generation X. I was Generation Y, like why,
yeah. Why? Yeah, I
Exactly. I was always
completely get
asking
that.
those questions, exactly. So I started going to the library at my school and reading up on it because I was a bit of an introvert, just I guess emotionally as a child, but I wanted to make friends. That's that INFJ personality. So astrology was kind of my way of asking people questions and getting to know them because people love to know about themselves and
Yeah.
what the stars say about them. And it was kind of my in to make friends, and it kind of removed some of that anxiety, that emotional anxiety when it came to meeting new people. And I grew up in an environment where I'm 37 years old and I've moved 33 times, and that was because of military and other environmental
Yeah.
factors in my life. So astrology was a grounding influence for me. So you look up at the stars and think, "Oh, that's the opposite because you're up there, you're not down here." For me, it was incredibly grounding because it allowed me to meet people, to see events that were coming, to just kind of be a part of society when I felt kind of anxious and alone, especially right after a big move. So,
I think as well, for me anyway, when I look up at the sky and I see the stars, and I'm by no way an astrology teacher, or I haven't got a vast amount of astrology info inside of me. But when I look up at the stars, I feel connected. And I feel
mhm.
like, no matter where you are in the world, you can look up and there they're there. And it's like, it's a little bit of a homecoming. That's the way I see it. I'm always at peace when I'm looking up at the stars. Um, so you're 37 and you've been learning this since you were 9 years old.
Yes.
So what advice can you give to someone like me, a 49-year-old who is only just starting? What advice can you give to me with regards to where do you even begin with astrology? It's so vast, it's so big. Where would you suggest you begin?
Well, I would suggest looking at your moon sign because your
Right.
moon sign represents your emotional state and your mind. So, in Vedic astrology, which is the first astrology, and then the other astrologies came after it, the moon was the most important sign. It was called the nakshatra, and it determined what lessons your soul had learned up until this point. So, and how it had developed. So, in getting to know your moon, you're getting to know your mind, and it's in controlling the mind that we begin to change our inner selves and develop and grow. So, really getting to know your moon and learn how to nurture it and also transform it at the same time. And the moon is it vacillates. It changes all month long. It's a
Yeah.
28-day cycle. So the moon is this constantly moving energy that you can track almost on a, everyday basis. You can look at the moon, you can
Yeah.
look at the signs, and you get to know all the different constellations that way too, because it's such a fast moving planetary body.
That's absolutely one thing that I recognise straight away, that, we've got the sun, which plays a massive part in everything, but that stays in a sign for a whole period of time, doesn't it? Whereas the moon, it's constantly changing, it's constantly moving. Is it 2.5 days for each sign, there or thereabouts?
Yes.
And it's full, it's new, it's waxing, it's waning, it's doing all of these different things, all within is it a 29-day cycle? Correct me if
28
I'm
and a
wrong.
half days.
28 and a half.
Oh,
Yeah, don't forget the
yeah.
halves. So it's doing all of these things within that short period of time, where the sun just kind of sits there and stays there. That's kind of stagnates, while the moon's keeping busy doing all these things, and it's bringing things in, it's taking things away, and it's kind of asking us to do different things on different phases of the moon. So I love the fact that the type of astrology that you're looking at really focuses in on the moon, because I love the moon. My tarot birth card is the moon.
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
And I'm a Cancer moon sign, so
And
it all
Cancer is
ties.
cool, but yeah, it all
So I'm a
ties
moon
in.
child.
Child. Yeah.
But so that makes it even more fascinating to me. I did know that there was different types of astrology. What is it that's the main one? What's the one that most people look at? Because that's different to the Vedic, isn't it? Slightly different.
That was just Western astrology, and it's based
That's
on the tropical zodiac. And what's really
right.
interesting is that it all combines. It just
All
depends on
combined.
where focus is on the chart and how you calculate the chart. So Western astrology is based off of the equinoxes and the solstices. Okay, so that's where it's calculated. So you would
Right.
start at the vernal equinox, which would be Aries, and you would end at Pisces. So that they go all completely around. Okay, and then
Hmm.
you have the two solstices in between. So it's just a way of connecting the seasons of our life
Right.
with stars. And then Vedic astrology is the exact planetary alignment based on the Earth's axis, which has changed about 24 degrees since
Yeah.
it was created. So it's about 24 degrees different. That's that sidereal calculation. And it's the exact alignment with the constellation at that moment in time. So it's just a little bit different of a calculation. But what's interesting is the Babylonians picked up the Vedic astrology and then the Egyptian astrology, and then so they kind of combine this into this beautiful way of looking at it. And the Egyptians then took it and they actually developed the tarot out of it. So there's just so many different connections. And the reason why Babylonians were such excellent astrologers is because they lived on a flat plane for thousands of years, and they had no mountains to get in the way of them seeing all the constellations. So every
Right.
time they saw something pass, a planet or a star or an event take place, like an eclipse, they wrote it down. They wrote down every child that was born, and they studied that. So
Right.
most of it is just being in the moment, aware of what's going on, and then going, okay, well, the last time Uranus was in Taurus was this time, and now we're in Uranus and Taurus again. So what does that mean for us now? And you would speculate what would happen, just like you would for a person's personality in their birth chart. So you can use it on a very personal level, and you can use it on this wide, expansive world level, and even on a more
Right.
century-based level.
That's
So
fantastic. That's fantastic. You see, this is all information that I love to learn and that I don't know. So it's absolutely amazing. And a lot of it for me, it's kind of like mind blowing, and it just starts to, whenever I learn something different about astrology, it always kind of feels like another piece of the jigsaw is falling into place.
it is.
And that, it's just amazing. It just totally fascinates me and completely and often blows my mind. It really, really does. It's just for everybody else that's watching. Before we came on live, I was having a little quick chat with you, wasn't I? And
Yes.
you asked me what my moon sign was in, and then you checked it out on a Vedic level.
Mm-hmm.
And the description that you gave me of myself was so accurate, unbelievably, and more accurate than what the Western astrology, it was Western astrology, you said, yeah?
Yes, there's
What a
Western
lot of people, yeah, the Western astrology was a lot more kind of in-depth and a lot more on point. It's possibly the closest explanation of myself that I've ever heard. And that was done within what, 2 minutes?
Oh, yes.
And that was absolutely amazing. So you learned about it from the age of 9. You've been studying about it ever since?
Yes, off and on. I did marry into an evangelical Christian family that threw away all my books. So I had to kind of get back into it in that way. And I know that that's very common for a lot of women who are getting into astrology and looking into, alternatives in addition to the spirituality that they grew up with. So there was a period of time where I kind of had to go hide in the broom closet. So,
yeah, I'm sure there's lots of people can resonate with that. Yeah, even on a tarot level, lots of people felt that way with regards to tarot too, didn't they? It's something that they had to keep hidden. And when we're talking about the moon, that's just unbelievably, in alignment with that as well. The moon hides a lot of things, doesn't it? But yeah, so go on. Sorry, I interrupted you. Sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. So I remarried a wonderful Capricorn, triple Capricorn, and he's just been so grounding and so supportive and so loving, and just said, you be you. So he's kind of been my part of my healing process, so to speak. And Jupiter is in my 7th house, so I got really lucky in the husband department. So. Yeah.
So when we like that, and I'm just going off on a little tangent here, but so you mentioned Jupiter is in your 7th house.
Mm-hmm. The 7th house is marriage and relationships. Right.
Okay. And there's 12 houses, isn't there, within astrology?
Yes.
And is that the same within Western as it is in Vedic?
It depends because the degrees differ a little bit. So it's about a 24-degree difference. So it would just depend on where your for instance, I have an Aquarius moon in Western astrology, and it's because it's at 29 degrees in Western, and I also have it in Vedic because it doesn't hit that 24 mark. So I'm at 6 degrees in Aquarius in Vedic astrology, and in Western astrology, I'm at 29 degrees. So you just have to do the math.
Right. Okay. Amazing. Really, really interesting. It sounds complicated too, especially when you're comparing the two, having to do the math all the time. But a lot of astrology is about maths. Is that right?
It is. It's basic geometry. You have 360 degrees in a circle, and each of those degrees adds up to a sign. So you have 30 degrees, 30 degrees, 30 degrees, and then you divide them by 3, and then you have, your decanters. And then in Vedic astrology, it's in 28, sometimes 27 nakshatras in some practices as well. And then you would divide those by 4 padas, which are feet in Sanskrit. So it's so you'd be like a Punavarsu pada 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then you would look at that and analyze it. Additionally, Western astrology has the one chart. You could look at invisible points like the east point, the ecliptic, the north and south nodes, which kind of determine past lives and the...
Right. Oh, interesting. Everybody's interested in past lives.
Oh, yes. And the Vedic astrology really gets into the past lives because you can go charts deep. It's not just one chart. There's 60 of them. So you can find karmic blocks.
Wow.
You can find what your dharma was from past lives and how it influences your incarnation in this particular life. You can look at your strengths, your spiritual strengths and weaknesses that have developed over time. You can look at karmic debts that you might owe people in your life, whether siblings or parents or maybe close friends. So it's really fascinating, and I absolutely love it.
That sounds more interesting and appealing to me than the Western astrology does, because that is something, past lives and karmic debts and everything like that is just like, woo, let me in,
Oh,
let me learn. So who is your main teacher?
well,
We all learn
I
from someone, don't we? I mean, I'm guessing that you did a lot of self-learning to begin with.
I did. I read a lot of Gary Goldsteiner's books. He has these giant astrology books where you can look at relationships and you can look up your birthday. And then I just, kept building up on my collection. And I got a book called Eastern Systems for Western Astrologers. And it was put together by a number of Western and Eastern astrologers who got together and found commonalities and ways to connect to philosophies and sciences. And that was amazing because it goes into Chinese astrology, it went into the I Ching, it went into Vedic astrology, it went into astrology and the chakras as interpreted by Yogananda. It was incredible. So then I started going on YouTube and I found a woman's channel. Her name is Komilla. And I started watching her videos every single day and I just got hooked. So I bought all of her books and I started reading those. And I started going to Vedic conferences and taking classes. And now I'm doing a rules and interpretations class with her where we go into the different yogas in the
Right.
Rasi chart and the 16 Vargas. So we can go really deep into the energies of the different charts in Vedic astrology. And I'm absolutely loving it. So
Fantastic. That sounds amazing. That really does sound amazing. Anything that goes deep, I'm there. Love. But how do you stop becoming overwhelmed with, because when you were talking there about how it goes off to this and this and this and the other and everything else, how does that not overwhelm you? How did you
well,
stop yourself from feeling overwhelmed?
it is kind of like trying to swallow the ocean in one gulp. You
Yeah.
got to do it in steps. Yeah.
And then the ocean ends up swallowing you.
Exactly. Well, and that's the whole point of it is,
Yeah.
if you look at the stars, if you look at the constellations, if you look at the plane of Earth that we live in, if you look at the different material planes, astral planes, Deva planes, whatever plane you want to go to, it's infinite. And we're in these finite bodies. So for our
Yeah.
finite existence to try to understand the infinite, we're in the limiting adjunct. We can't necessarily do it unless we're self-realized and we're Buddha or we're Sivananda or we're Jesus. So it's a little difficult for the average person to just again, like I said, swallow the ocean in one gulp. So just allow the ocean to swallow you
Yeah.
and be at peace in it and learn what you can.
Right.
So
Okay.
and let it bring you peace, because what astrology does is it shows us that even though this all appears to be very chaotic, there's actually a very clear system in place.
Right.
So we're going through this terrible time or this wonderful time or this we're all in this divine leela living these different lives, and they're good, they're bad, they're happy, they're sad, and to know that it all comes from one source and that there's a purpose behind it, I find brings me a lot of grounding.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially when you've gone through the really hard stuff, the suffering, because we change when we tire of suffering. We begin to transform ourselves because we don't want to feel that way anymore.
We absolutely do. And I have, well, people that have followed me for quite a while will know that I'm always talking about balance. And you have to experience the sad, otherwise you can't fully enjoy and appreciate the happy. You've got to, you've got to have gone through the low times in order to really appreciate the highs. And you've got to have that balance, otherwise you can't fully appreciate anything, because then it just becomes a thing without anything attached to it. So we've got to live in this, or we do live in this world of balance. The world is balanced. It's got to keep on spinning, and for it to spin, it's got to be on a correct axis. And everything else kind of, just falls into line, and it's just, it really, really does blow my mind. But balance for me is something that I find, we live in a world of balance. Everything has to be balanced. Karma brings the balance
Yes.
into line, so that everything can stay and can continue to be on, moving and doing its thing in the right direction. We can't have too much bad in the world. It's got to be equaled out by some good. So, when you hear about these traumas and these horrible things that go on in the world, sometimes the media doesn't always reflect all of the wonderful things that are going on to compensate for that. And the media can have a big influence on how we feel, and that knocks us out of balance because they're not reporting on a balanced level. But coming back to the balance, it's kind of like just understanding that sometimes we come here in our bodies in this physical world to experience more of one side than the other. Mm-hmm. And as you've kind of touched on, past lives have an effect on this life. We might be paying back some karmic debts, or we might be in credit. We never know. We never know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So being able to use that system to find out, am I in credit or am I in debt? For me right now, I'm feeling very much in debt for things that have going on in my life in the last few years. But the work that I do, which I've been doing before all of this began to happen, is truly me paying it forward too.
Yes. Well, and suffering is not a sentence. I tell people that it brings about change. It brings about renewal. So people go, oh, I must have bad karma. I'm suffering. And I'm like, it's not always related to a debt. It could be that your higher self, the greater source, is trying to help you evolve into even a greater and more beautiful spirit. So, if you're losing, like, for instance, material assets, it's going to move you toward the spiritual. We only have so much energy in these bodies that we have. So if you experience these losses, it makes room for spirit to come in and help you grow. So I know that a lot of there are certain religions and faiths that go, oh, well, if you're suffering, it's because you sinned. And it's like, no, actually, karma is not a blame game. No. Karma is really like exactly what you said. It is a system of checks and balances. And the whole purpose of it is to help us grow closer to the divine. And some people, they need to experience joy to do that. Other people, they need to suffer a little bit and break apart some of those things that they're clinging to that no longer serve them.
I often say to people when they ask me that, sometimes we need to be shown what we don't want in order to progress towards what we do want. Because until we know what we don't want, how can we possibly know exactly what we do want?
You're exactly right.
So it all helps you to grow. So although it's difficult to go through suffering, it often is absolutely essential in order to get you to where you're meant to be. And that can be on a very heightened level or in a place that you couldn't even possibly dare to dream of.
Well, the Western culture, the ultimate symbol of that is the death of Christ. He's he's an avatar of God that came down to show us how to be. Don't be in the material, be in the spiritual, be good, serve, love, help the least among you, feed the poor, do all of these good things. And he was crucified. He went through the ultimate, death, rebirth, and resurrection to show us, hey, this is how it works.
Yeah.
And his last words were, God, forgive them, they know not what they do, because he's like, they're doing this out of Thomas, out of ignorance. So it was his way of showing us a way of living in the light, and that suffering is not, in fact, because we're necessarily bad people. It brings us closer to the divine. So, and it's, throughout religions, it's throughout cultures, it's without spirituality is, what we make it into, but we are all connected to this one big, beautiful source that is within all of us and is all around us that we can tap into. And it's the only thing that's keeping us away from it is our ego and our experiences and this limiting adjunct that we're living in. So that's just my personal.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, I do, well, I've never thought of myself as a very religious person. So when I'm talking about I do speak of the divine, but if I'm referring to what you may call God, I'll be referring to the universe.
Hmm.
because, but it's just that higher consciousness that all being, all seeing, the creator. You know, it's whatever name you want to give that higher purpose. You know, it's got many names throughout many
Many
different
paths.
cultures.
Yeah,
Um,
many paths.
I can't bring myself to believe that there's more than one. It's just
Mm,
that one has been given many names. So
I
for
agree with
me, that the name that I give it is the universe, or
you.
the universal consciousness, because it's
Hmm.
it's that one thing, that higher guidance that we're all connected to.
And I get that when I'm meditating. So
Yeah,
that definitely resonates with me as well.
yeah. Because for me, and it's really sad, because I think all religions have their really good, solid points. And I do think that if you have a faith, no matter what that faith might be, it's a fabulous thing just to have faith, isn't it?
Yes.
Because, and especially if you are suffering, if you are having struggles, because if you can keep that faith, and you can, you know, if you've got faith, you've got hope. And if you've got hope in your heart, you can overcome anything, can't you? And
Yeah, you are.
that's my outlook on life, and it's certainly the outlook I've had to have for the last few years as well. And I must admit, you were a real shining light for me when I was going through a very difficult time.
Oh,
The guidance that you were offering on your page, and that was coming in the form of the astrological tarot deck that you use, the karma cards.
yes, yes.
And what is his name?
Monty
Monty
Bar.
Faber. Yes, Monty Faber. And I've seen a little bit of Monty, and he's wonderful. I've listened to a few podcasts of his, and he seems like a really good guy. I know you know him a little bit, well, quite a lot better than I do. And
He let me do his chart. Oh my goodness.
he let you
That
do.
is,
Oh, fantastic!
yes, I read.
Fantastic!
It was amazing. And what was funny was I told
Fantastic!
my husband after he asked me to read his chart, I said, I feel like I'm like me going up against Muhammad Ali for boxing lessons because
I
Monty's
imagine.
been doing it again for longer than I've been alive. I mean, he invented these beautiful karma
Yeah,
cards.
and they're
And
fabulous. How long have they been going for? How long have the karma cards been in existence for? Is it the 70s?
gosh, I think it's like he was developing them then. Let's see, 1988 was the first.
Was that the
Yeah.
first edition?
Yeah, and that was
I
actually
know I
around.
was a baby. I know I was a baby when they came out. So,
And what made them boom is really interesting. It was Nancy Reagan put astrology on the map of all people, a Republican president's wife.
right.
And yeah, she hired and consulted an astrologer. I think her name was Joan Quigley, and
Right.
she put her on the White House staff to like basically handle all of the events that were going on in the United States presidency. And Quigley was credited for saving Ronald Reagan's life from assassination. I believe that was March 30th, 1981. But it came out that Nancy was consulting an astrologer and hired one on staff, and then all these women just came rushing to, buy karma cards and get into astrology. So I thought that was really cool.
Isn't it also true that way back when royalty, the kings
Yeah,
and queens of long
the
times ago,
Medici.
used
Hmm.
to bring on an astrologist into their fold and have them
Yeah,
read for them and predict for them. And, you know, when you think about it that way, you think, oh, how far back does this go? You know, it just goes back to,
it goes back to the ancient
there's
sages
no
and the
date.
rishis. Yeah, yeah.
There's
The,
no
the
date
famous
exists.
Rajas, yeah, the
Yeah,
famous Rajas and the kings of India would consult. They would literally have Vedic priests on staff, and they would, give them what they needed and do this. And then whenever they were going into war, whenever they were going to get a
yeah.
marriage
They
together,
would
whenever they
consult with
were going
them.
to buy lands or do, kingly things, they would always consult the Vedic rishis. And one of the rishis was an astrologer, Vedic astrologers, and it's actually called the science of light. That's what Jyotish is. So it goes back thousands of years. The Egyptians
Fantastic.
used it, the Chinese used it, the Babylonians used it, the Sumerian used it, the Romans got it from the Greeks after they brought them on as slaves. So, and yeah, all the way up until modern day. But yeah, you were right. The royal families, the Medici, am I saying that right? Family. They
Mhm.
consulted Nostradamus. They put Nostradamus on the map, and he used astrology to predict events and make, yeah. So, and then Queen Elizabeth was told as a young princess in prison that she would ascend the throne, and so she kept her astrologer on staff after she did ascend the throne. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's all really interesting. But,
And all of this is, it really does hold weight, doesn't it? It's been proven time and time again, year after year, century after century, and it's been proven, and that's why it still exists.
yeah.
Now, as you said at the beginning, astrology and astronomy are different.
Well, astronomy is basically it's being able to look up at the stars and name the constellations, look at the degrees, look at the the brightness. It's more of a way of identification,
Right.
but it's not really attached to the meaning behind it. It wasn't until Ptolemy came out with the Tetrabiblos. It's a set of 4 books that that really go into the significance of each fixed star and its significance in that person's life. So if their moon was it their natal moon or Saturn or Sun or one of the nodes was conjunct a fixed star, it would tell you something about their incarnation in this lifetime.
Right.
So yeah, so I mean they are related and they aren't. So I mean it's everything's related. But if you
Yes,
ask the
everything's
average
related, everything's connected. There's threads of running through everything, isn't there? They're all connected. I'm trying to think. You obviously you do both, don't you? You do tarot, you do astrology.
I
How do
do.
you find? Do you separate them or do you bring them together?
I bring them together. I call them taroscopes. So
Right.
whenever someone asks me for a tarot reading, I ask them for their astrological information, and then I'll look
Right.
at their chart because especially in Vedic astrology, there are things called dashas, mahadashas and antardashas. And what that is a mahardasha is what planet is in control of your life right now. It could be
Right.
Jupiter, it could be your moon, it could be your sun. I'm in Saturn right now. Oh boy. Uh, that's a fun one.
Yeah.
Lots of restrictions, lots of blocks,
Lots of
and I'm in
restrictions.
Bodhisattva, which is karmic lessons are coming my way. So it's a whole
Oh,
oh
yeah,
yeah.
batten down the
So
hatches.
yeah, literally, and just give and love and serve and purify right now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to pay for it later. But anyway, so you look at what major planet is in charge, and then there are subdashas, and you can keep going down and down and down. But there's one antardash, that's the one right after, and it's kind of like a child-parent relationship in a family. So you have the
Right.
parent, which is the mahadasha, and then you have the child, which is the subdasha, and they both have an influence, but the parent has more influence than the child, but the child's still there. So it's
Right.
looking that those 2 dashas in a person's chart and then looking at what nakshatra they're in, which is their astrological sign, as well as how it's relating to the other planets, and then I can tell them what's going on. So
That's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
and then you take the tarot out. The tarot can give you a very similar story, but it all ties in. And it was actually Egyptians and they linked it to the tarot, the astrology, and the 12 Egyptian sky gods are linked very much in the tarot. I'll give you some symbols, and you can probably tell me what tarot cards they're in.
All right.
The
Okay,
bull.
go on. Let's go for it.
There's okay. There's the bull. There's
Yep.
the lion.
The what? Sorry, the
Uh,
lion.
the lion.
Lion, the strength card.
Yes, and it's also in the Wheel of Fortune, and
Yes,
it's
it
also
is.
in
Also
yeah.
in the world card. Yeah.
There you go.
There you
And
go.
there's the bull. You know the bull. There's the scarab.
Yes. The scarab is related to the. Oh, now this confuses me because I've got a deck of cards that uses a scarab for the pentacles, but I'm sure the scarab is water. Is that
It's in
right?
the moon card. It's the little. It's actually it looks like a lobster in the moon card, but there's that
That's right. Yes.
the crab.
Yes.
It's
So
also
it's in
the
the, yeah.
crab,
Yeah.
lobster, scarab. There's the what's really interesting is the horizon, which is Libra. So Libra is like it's a line, and then it has a little, and it's literally called the
Yeah.
horizon. That's Libra. So if you go the sheep, which would be Aries, the bull, which is Taurus, 2 men clasping hands, that's the 2 of cups, or the, other
Yeah.
2 people. The scarab, the lion, the maiden, which could be the star. It could be a number of, and also in the strength card. the horizon, which could be the sun, and there's also there's the horizons in many of the minor
Yeah.
tarot as well. There's the archer, there's the goat,
Yes.
there's the waterman, so to speak, which would be the star. That's Aquarius, and then there's the
Well,
fishes.
yeah. Water.
Pisces. So they took the Egyptian sky gods and they incorporated them into these tarot images, which have then just been passed down from many cultures and societies. And it was a way of divination as early as,
Yeah.
as I believe, 3000 BC to 300 BC. So it goes back.
Yeah.
The tarot's a lot older than people think.
I know, and you know, when I look at the history of tarot, everybody seems to be of the same club, that it all started with the what's it called? The Italian Renaissance.
Well, they put it on the map, the Medici family.
And it's like,
And
no, it goes so far the back than that.
they had astrologers on staff at the papal court. And the reason why it was such a big deal back then was it wasn't until St. Thomas Aquinas brought it back out with its validity, because the Catholic Church said, it's not Jesus, it's not the Bible, you can't do this, it's the devil. And then St. Thomas, he got into it and he said, no, this is a science, this is actually very valid, and he made it okay. And then the royalty made it really popular. So the church has been attacking astrology because it wants control, it wants money. That's really what it comes to. And they think that, you know, if you want to control a culture and you want to control the money, you got to get into their heads. And you have to tell them, look, if you don't do this, if you don't do that. And it's kind of like a system where, well, you're not praying hard enough, that's why your daughter died. Or you're not doing this hard enough or well enough, that's why this is happening to you. And that's where tarot and astrology goes, no, actually, it's a science. There's actually a divine purpose behind all of this. So anyways, all the way up until even the 1980s, you know, churches are telling people, oh, don't do the tarot, don't do this, don't do that. And you're looking at it and going, but it's a science that even saints in the Catholic Church came and said, oh, no, this is fine. There was actually, before the resurgence in the 60s, there was a woman named Evangeline Adams, and she was the first American astrologer. Of course, it's a woman, right? And she predicted this horrific event in this hotel in New York, and it burnt to the ground that night. She just said, there's in this area, this place, all of the planets are having just this crazy energy right now, and something horrible is going to happen tonight. And the hotel burned down that she was speaking in. So they arrested her. They put her in prison
because they thought she was polluting.
They said either you started the fire or you're a witch, because that was pretty much, you know, the way women were treated. So she was charged and she was brought before a judge, and the judge said, okay, if you can give me an accurate reading about my son, if I give you his exact birth date, time, and location, I'll believe you. So he gave it to her, and she was so accurate that he congratulated her and called it a dignity of exact science. And this was a very conservative, like, you know, staunch judge who everyone just went, ugh. So this is the woman who put astrology on the map in America after predicting this event in New York. So again, from as far back as Egypt to now, I mean, or actually the Rishis, which is even before that. So it's
as
kind
you talking about that, I literally filled up with goosebumps from top to bottom. Literally. Now, whenever that happens to me, that is my guides, my spirits telling me that this is absolutely on point information. And you know, it's massive clarification, and that is how I get it. It's just literally, it starts from my toes and it just comes up. It's a wonderful feeling, and it's like, yes, you know, that's completely in alignment with that. But yeah, it's such a shame how many people, and it still follows through today, as to people fear tarot, don't they? And they fear astrology. They fear anything that can predict, because they think that there must be something evil underlying, and it's just not true. It's just not right. And See, Believe, Hope and Dream also got goosebumps when you were telling that story too.
Well, I see that one of the listeners says the Kabbalists also studied astrology, and that was back during the Babylonian period. So that's like
Yeah.
4000 BC to 125 BC. So this has been a part of the Jewish
Forever.
faith for thousands of years. And what's interesting is when the Jews were practicing astrology during the Babylonian era, there's a term called Mazel Tov, and it means occasions of joy, right? And so Masalat is a sign in the Kabbalistic, interpretations of the constellation, and it literally means good constellation. So it's you can pretty much tie it into any faith and culture,
Yeah.
but yeah, I just saw that someone mentioned, and
Yeah.
Ptolemy also goes into the Kabbalistic interpretations of the
There's
fixed
too
stars
much.
and
There's too
tarot.
much out there, isn't there, for it ever to be completely, totally and utterly disrespected or thrown out, because it's just too much science. There's too much evidence behind it. It's been around for far too long. It's been around longer than any of us ever have, no matter how many lives we might have been incarnated in. But it's just been there forever, and I always find it really quite sad when people are afraid of these things, because it has so much to offer.
Oh, I
It really,
completely.
really does. I mean, I myself have been called so many horrible names for using
Oh,
tarot. I was told I was an abomination
mm.
of the species because I read tarot, and I thought, oh my goodness, like, please
Well, and
spend some time
and
getting to
isn't it?
know me, because I'm not. It's like,
And you live in England, London, right?
yes, yeah,
Yeah, okay. So there are other astrologers and other readers that came before you. There was William Lilly. I don't know if you know him. He predicted the London fire, and he was
right.
brought before Parliament, and they were going to kill him. And he was acquitted after they found out, oh my gosh, he's figured this science out. So it isn't until you get in front of people and you actually prove it to them that they're willing to kind of, and I'm not talking everybody, there are a lot of
No,
very
yeah,
beautiful people, but there are some people where they react in fear,
yeah.
like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And then once you kind of get past that block that they have, they're a little more accepting. But I know that another person that really put astrology on the map was also from Britain, from your area, and his name was Alan Leo. He was a British astrologer,
I
and he
haven't
brought it
heard of
to
him.
millions. Yes, he came out with Astrologers magazine in 1914, and he was prosecuted by the court for fortune telling because it was illegal in the London area. Yeah. So he changed the name to modern astrology after
Right.
explaining it to people, because he couldn't call it Astrologers magazine because astrologers was considered to be like this dark art, even though it really is a science. It's just noticing what's going on in the environment. But
It's absolutely crazy. And it makes you wonder, the people that instill the fear surrounding these practices, it makes you wonder what they fear from it, doesn't it?
well, yeah,
I
I
mean, I know
think people fear.
everything can be used for good and for evil. Absolutely, everything can be. And that's what I always say to people who are asking me about learning tarot. I say, yeah, you can learn tarot, but what if somebody else is using it for evil? I says, well, you've just got to make sure that you're not, that you're using it for the good. You set your intentions that it's for the greater good of yourself and for anyone that you're reading for, or anyone concerned within the situation or whatever that it is that you're reading for. Because I'm a massive, massive believer in intention. And if you set your intentions that what you are doing is coming from a really good place, coming from your heart with love, then there's nothing to fear, is there? There's really, really nothing to fear.
Yep, you are
And
you are
it's
correct.
difficult. I mean, people like yourself and me, we've been trying to dispel these fears that surround these different practices for the whole time that we've been involved in them. And it's uh, it's hard work sometimes.
Well,
It can be hard work, and it doesn't need to be. It doesn't
Well,
need
and
to be.
it wasn't just astrologers that suffered too. It was basically anyone who had knowledge that people, feared or didn't really like, and after the fall of Rome, Christianity took over. Like it was just
Yeah,
boom.
yeah,
And the church preached against astrology. They preached against midwifery. They preached
mm,
against healers. They preached against herbalists and anyone who stood in the way of the money.
yeah,
Because were you going to the priest to pray over you, or are you going to pray the herbalist for the cure? Are you going to pray to go to the priest to find out what event is coming up, or are you going to go to an astrologer? And rather than integrate themselves into a culture, they just killed everybody and it just took over. So, and that's kind of a conquer-based
Yeah.
Western mind. You know, it happened to the Native Americans. That was what happened in America.
Divide
You
and
know,
conquer, isn't it? It's crazy.
yeah,
Absolutely
it is.
crazy.
It
Right,
is.
Michelle. Oh, there's my throat chakra away. We have got 10 minutes left. How do you feel about pulling a couple of those karma cards for some of the lovely people that are watching on the live
Oh, let's
now?
do it. It's so
Is that,
fun.
yeah, is that good? You don't mind? Is that good with you?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yes.
Who that is watching right now would like to have a karma card pulled by the lovely Michelle? Let's see.
Well, there's a gal that says, can you explain what being born during a retrograde means?
Oh, there you go. That's definitely one for you. Yeah.
Okay, so that's forced introspection. So when a planet is retrograde, it forces you to go within rather than going out. Okay, so Mercury retrograde, for example, impacts all forms of communication. That's that throat chakra, the way you think about things. So during these periods, we often experience delays, we experience mix-ups, we experience accidents when it comes to communication and transportation and technology. So what it's forcing you to do is go within, cross those T's, dot those I's, and really, really focus on your communications and be very aware of it. Now, the only retrograde that I consider to be very positive, I mean, they're all positive, but
Yeah.
is Neptune, because he takes those blinders off and shows you those rose-colored glasses and then shows you what's really going on. So, you know, your Disney prince turns out to be a villain. It's going to happen during Neptune retrograde, right? So, yeah. And then we actually have a Pluto retrograde coming up. So I think that's on the 28th. So that's going to be
when the
interesting.
28th, did you say?
The 28th of this month, we have Pluto retrograde.
And what does that mean then? What does that signify?
Basically, Pluto is death, rebirth, and transformation. And so it's death, rebirth, and transformation on an internal level. It's going inside. It's doing shadow work.
Doing the shadow work.
Yeah, it's looking at those dark places. It's going in and clearing the cobwebs. Yeah.
I'm so not looking forward to the 28th of April. Too much shadow work. Too much shadow work. Right, okay, let's get to the cards. Kelsey Mack was the first one to ask. She would love a card, please, Michelle.
Okay.
So, Kelsey Mack.
All right, Chelsea Mack, this is just for you. Okay, I got the 12th house. Now, the 12th house is represented by Pisces, okay? It also represents the hanged man in the standard tarot, okay? I also see it as kind of the world, because it could go upside down or up, you know. So here's your card right here, so you can see it. Okay, it represents compassion, philanthropy, hospitals, asylums, institutions, prisons. It also represents telepathy, psychic gifts, hidden things, secrets. It rules the Svadhisthana chakra and also the feet. So I don't know what your particular question is, but basically, you know, focus on seeking oneness with all there is, developing compassion, looking at the, you know, also, it also goes into keeping your involvement hidden. So if there's something in your life right now that you're really excited about that you want to show everybody, keep it hidden for now, really develop it, and then show it to the world later, because the 12th house is asking you to pause and go in a little bit.
Fabulous.
So,
absolutely fabulous. Yeah, that's fabulous. I hope that resonates with you, Kelly.
Yeah, the more specific questions, the more specific the answers. So
yeah. What Kate Knit would really like a card?
Okay.
What Kate Knit? Please, could she have a card?
All right. Got a card for you. I got the 4th house. Okay. So the 4th house is related to Cancer, which is one of your favorite signs, Carol.
It is.
And, it represents the moon in the tarot. And it's also linked to the mother, the kitchen, the family, real estate. It rules Ajna chakra, which is that third eye. Okay, because you know mother's intuition, and
it certainly has that.
It's your home, it's your family. So what Spirit's asking you to focus on now is do what makes you feel secure. Do what makes you feel just kind of at home and supported. So if you're doing that, then you're on the right track. And listening to
Fantastic.
that, yeah.
Kate will be able to resonate with that. I do know Kate.
Oh,
Right. Clive holding 12. Could he please have a card?
okay. Here we go. Ooh, that's very clear. Okay. Oh, you got Venus. Oh, that's so wonderful.
I
I
love the
love
planet Venus.
Venus. She rules Libra. I also kind of see her as the chariot in this particular, and she's also the sevens. Okay. So it's marriage, it's contract, it's the legal system, it's relationships, it's that anahata, that heart chakra. You know, Libra season is when we bring in the harvest. So we get all delicious food and to store it up for winter and get married and have these wonderful times with family and friends. And she also is, she also rules the lower back and kidneys too. So take care of that area. I don't know why that's coming into my head, but yeah. So Venus is very, a very good card to get. So focus on that anahata and loving life and really enjoying yourself right
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Could Anne Dickinson 481 please have a card?
now. I'm thinking, okay, this is just for you. Ooh, okay. Oh, you got the sun. All right.
Ooh,
Sun is
whoa.
ruled by, it's also the strength card, and there's also a sun card in the tarot as well. So it's the father in the astrological chart. It also represents self-confidence. It can represent gambling because it's fifth house. And it rules the Srahasrara, which is our crown chakra. And so it's connected to the heart and the spine as well in the body. So, really, developing that spine, growing that self-confidence, and showing the world who you are. This is your time to really,
Shine.
shine. Shine.
Yeah, shine, just like the sun.
Get it? The world is your
Fantastic.
stage. Yes. Yeah.
Fantastic. Kathleen Webb. Hi, Kathleen. Could Kathleen have a card, please? Kathleen's
Okay.
lovely. She's a wonderful soul. Kathleen, 1929.
Okay. Oh, I got the seventh house. That's marriage.
Ooh.
Okay. So that's against marriage, contracts, relationships, diplomacy in your relationships. Really, if you have a partner in your life, or if you don't, focusing on what makes you happy in relationships with other people, cooperation, partnership, balance. Really finding it's working on that anahata chakra. So yeah, that's a really beautiful house to get. So I would say, really focus on loving yourself, loving your partner, and developing your relationship. And if you don't have that, focusing on that relationship with yourself and how you relate to the people in and around you, and bring how they bring you joy, and really focusing on the joy that those relationships do bring you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Do we have time for one more?
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. Benny's Jet was next in line. And
Okay.
no one's got specific questions tonight, but they're just saying they would love a card. So let's see
Okay.
what comes up for Benny's Jet.
Okay. Oh, they're being obstinate with me. Let me shuffle. It happens every now and then, like that one won't come up. Oh,
Decks
that's very
always have a little character of their own, don't they? They do have
they
their own little
really do.
personalities.
Well, I got Sagittarius. Okay. And Sagittarius is growth, it's expansion, it's ruled by Jupiter. Okay, so there could be some growth and expansion coming into your life. Jupiter is currently in Pushkara in Vedic Astrology, so lots of blessings. It's actually going over my moon, which is fabulous. So it brings a lot of healing. It can help with long distance travel, going to foreign lands, and people learning about foreign cultures and religions, something outside of yourself. So I don't know what you're studying right now, whether it's a healing art or something that you are really passionate about that's outside of what you grew up with. Keep going because spirit supports it.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Would you mind, could I be really cheeky? Would you mind drawing a card for me?
Of course.
Let's
Oh
see
my
what
God.
comes out.
I'm so glad you asked. Okay. Whoa, I got a jumper. That's very rare for this deck. The sun!
Yay!
Shine!
Yay! Everything's going to get better! Yay!
Yes. And what's interesting is in Vedic astrology, your sun is actually in Gemini, which is communications. And
Right.
communications are all, this is what we're doing right now. It's letting
Yeah.
yourself shine on
Yeah.
social media. Gemini's very
Oh,
social.
yes.
So you're going to get great business. You're going to have a wonderful practice. It's also teaching. The sun loves to teach, and the world is your stage for just sharing your tarot and getting into this beautiful healing art with other people. So this is your time to.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So it's we've actually been on for an hour now. Can you believe it? So it has been absolutely fabulous. You have got an unbelievable vast wealth of knowledge within you. You absolutely, really, truly do. And I wish that we could talk for longer. I really, really do. Where can other people find you, and what do you offer? What services do you offer? So where can people find you, and what services can you offer them?
Well, they can find me here on Instagram. This is the main platform that I use, and it's at Astrological Tarot, no spaces or anything. My website is astrologicaltarot.com. And if I have a link tree in my Instagram account with all of the things that I have that I offer and all of the shows and all the things that I'm part of. A lot of the services I offer tarot readings. I call them tarot scopes because I do look at your horoscope before I give you a reading because that tells me what's going on in your life right now. I offer past lives readings. I offer maybe readings, for telling us a certain event. I do relationship readings. I go into your entire Vedic chart just to kind of see where your soul is at right now, what to expect, what you've been through, your dharmic path, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Why you're incarnated here and now. If there's a certain trauma or something that's happened in your life, you can give me that date and I can tell you, what was going on at that time astrologically and provide some healing. So there's a number of services. I also look at chakras because the astrology is linked to the chakras. And so I can tell you what blocks are there. And then, you can go to a Reiki healer and really emphasize those areas that are kind of keeping you back and maybe, feeling sick and not so great spiritually. So
A huge amount of services that you have to offer. Absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So we are going to have to leave it there. So anybody that wants to connect with Michelle or at Astrological Tarot, I said it right. You can find her at Astrological Tarot. It really has been an absolute pleasure. The information that you've given us tonight is amazing. It really, really is. And yeah, lots of good starting points for anybody that's wanting to begin to learn astrology. So thank you again. Thank you so very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And it's been an education. It really has. So thank you. I'm going to leave it there. Take care. Thank you to everybody that has joined us. It's just been fab. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Bye
so
for
much.
now. Bye-bye.